They failed to not only impeach Alejandro Mayorkas because you had four. It was four, and I realized on the screenshot or one of the links that I have, it showed that it was three at the time. It was updated because you had another individual change their votes at the last minute to be a yes vote, but or a no vote rather on Mayorkas. It's just a mess. I mean, this is you have this situation with Mayorkas. Out of all of the times to impeach this guy for not doing his job, this would have been the time to do it. This would have been the time to do it. And then you have the border bill, which, because you had three, it wasn't just two losses, it was three losses that Republicans had yesterday. So you had the border bill that Republicans still have failed to handle the messaging on. In addition to that, you also had the standalone bill with Israel. They at least, I will say, they at least sent it to the floor and waited for Democrats to vote that down. So Democrats are on record about that. And then you had the Mayorkas impeachment. So let's start with the border bill, because there was a sheriff's association as well. And I'm going to pull this up because this was something that was important. Yesterday you had the Border Patrol that came out and said that they liked the one specific aspect of it. But then you had a group of sheriffs that came out and condemned this bill, said that you shouldn't even be negotiating this border bill. It's ridiculous. So good for them on that. Here's the problem, and I said this yesterday. The very first fatal error that Republicans accepted as serious was the argument that you have to have more laws to enforce the existing law at the border, because you don't need to move to the amendment stage because this entire premise is a non-starter. So that was the first error. And they immediately shot themselves in their foot. We went over all of this yesterday. But then on top of it, they still yesterday failed to get the upper hand on messaging. Then they compounded the optics with the failed impeachment vote. Now, did you hear Ronna McDaniel? She's announced she's stepping down after the South Carolina primary. Good Lord, put a hand over my mouth right now. You know, he could have stepped down after all those losses we started racking up after 2016. You know, we could have been doing it, stepping down since then. But as I wrote in my piece that you got this morning, the Republican Party is a symphony of idiots right now. So you have the situation with the border bill, the Mayorkas impeachment, the broke Republican Party, not just nationally, but state by state, and the fundraising. We're not even getting into that. The back and forth arguing as to who's going to be RNC chair, but apparently the story is that Ronna McDaniel said that she was stepping down from the South Carolina primary, after the South Carolina primary. That was what was reported. I think it came out from Politico, I think, that reported it. So this is just the worst timing I think I've ever seen. They're really good on that. They're really good at picking the most ridiculous timing to do this kind of stuff. So, like we said, with the border bill, and then the Mayorkas impeachment just fell apart. They had 4 Republicans that voted with Democrats and decided that they weren't going to progress this bill. Oh, and then don't even let me forget the Anheuser-Busch stuff. So they had the impeachment of DHS Secretary Mayorkas failed. The Republican votes, you had 4 of them. Scalise was absent. His cancer, his ongoing cancer treatments. They wheeled one Democrat in hospital scrubs, fresh out of surgery, so that he could cast his vote and make it to where there wasn't even close to a tie. So there you have it. So they really foobarred that. So they had, in the span of a singular hour, 60 minutes, in the span of 60 minutes, you had 2 major votes in the Republican House on 2 huge issues. And within 60 minutes, they had double losses. 60 minutes, they had double losses. Maybe they're going to have another. Hey, doesn't it sound like this is the time to have another speaker fight? Good time to have another speaker fight, right, guys? Go ahead and get somebody even with less political capital than the guy that has less political capital than the guy that you ousted. I mean, I don't know. The Mayorkas thing, though, the this has been, I hope you realize that the Mayorkas fight has always been about the border and the administration. It's been one of the best ways that Republicans have been able to, as a congressional body, for the lack of a better way to put it, prosecute the lack of enforcement at the border. And that's what this has always been. But for them to, I mean, it's all like, I get it. It's all performative theater because it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate, but it does something. It pushes something. It gets Republicans on the record with something. And at least if you're impeaching the guy, it's much more than this stupid performative, well, we resolve, one of those stupid resolutions that don't do anything. And it also shows that lawmakers in the House are hearing the electorate. They're hearing voters who are disaffected by everything that they've been seeing at the border. But the problem with this is that it showed the absolute disaster that is House leadership. Mike Johnson is a nice guy, but nice guys, that doesn't mean anything when it comes to getting the job done as Speaker. He does not have the political capital to be Speaker. Mike Johnson is a nice guy. We know some mutual people. Never met him. I have nothing bad to say about him, as I've never met him. You have to be a ball breaker to be Speaker. And then you also have to be one part ball breaker and one part super sweet. You got to be out. You got to be a fundraiser. You got to be everything to everybody. And you got to be able to manipulate people to do what you want to do in order to shepherd stuff through the House. And Mike Johnson can't do it. He is not the guy to do it. So this Speaker fight, remember when people were getting mad at me because I said this is going to be a disaster and not because I was a fan of Kevin McCarthy? I'm literally originally one of the people who did not like Kevin McCarthy from the get-go, back when he wrote the Young Guns book. But all of these cats who are on mommy and daddy's teat in the public sector or doing grunt work at their family business instead of getting experience anywhere else and going to Ivy League universities and waiting for seats to open up so they could buy them, whether they were on 30A or somewhere else. All of these people who are actually even older than me, by the way, and had less skin in the game, less record, less conservatism, less sacrifice for the movement, were up in arms that I was criticizing their theatrical performance because they were doing this as a grudge match against McCarthy because they were mad that he was allowing this ethics investigation, which is continuing against Matt Gaetz. Oh, they were so mad. But my whole point was you're going to get something like this. And you better damn believe I'm going to say, yes, I told you. I told everybody this was going to happen. This is what happens when you get a guy who's not used to this position. Being Speaker of the House is more than just a title. You got to have a particular skill set to do this job. Johnson don't got it, folks. And we're going to have more losses. This is one of the reasons that we had this loss yesterday. I mean, we would not have, if you had a more powerful, and look, by this, you need to also realize what I'm saying. You're never going to get a hardcore conservative in this job because you don't have enough hardcore conservatives in the House. It is a reflection of the electorate. If you want a hardcore conservative speaker, you better be electing more hardcore conservatives to the House, and it can't be the same group of welfare activists that travel from state to state to do everybody's job for them. That means everybody's got to get off their sweet keisters and throw in, oh, I know you're not supposed to lecture the voters. You're supposed to treat them like babies. Well, that's what big government does. I don't do that. So this is the problem. He doesn't have the political capital to do it. He's JV. He's on the JV squad. I'm not being ignorant. That's just the way it is. Guys who are aggressive, who got the political capital and can do it, you wouldn't have lost 4 votes. You wouldn't have. You would not have lost 4 votes. And it wasn't just one time within 60 minutes. It was 2 times within 60 minutes that we had this. And I mean, he lost 14 Republicans. 14 Republicans. I mean, granted, like when they were doing the border bill, they were trying to do the standalone bill, foreign aid bill for Israel, right? They didn't want to have these 2 issues in this one mashup, and I get it. And the standalone bill did have some bipartisan support. They brought it directly to the floor. It didn't go through the Rules Committee to do it. I get it. But he lost 14 Republicans. So we have a major problem